Welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast with Jared Kirk and Matt Milbauer. On today's show, Jared and I sat down with Jordan Horak. Jordan, you've probably heard of Jordan. He's been on tons of other podcasts, Me Eater. He's the creator of the Cato board. He's had a couple of Cocker Spaniels. He's several successful dogs with a couple of Cocker Spaniels. Achieved some pretty high statuses in the field trialing world, including national championships. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. We had a great time talking to him. We actually lost track of time, just chatting up bird dog training and his somewhat unique approach to it. But I think it's an approach that I think as you learn, as you listen to this, that maybe all of us should be thinking about using when it comes to training our dogs. Enjoy the episode. Hey Jordan, thanks for joining us on the Go Flush Yourself podcast. I'll have to admit, and I haven't told you this on purpose yet, we've been chatting before this, but like in I think 2020 or 2021, I got my first Spaniel. I got a Cocker. Before that, I had Labs. And like your videos like got me through COVID and training that little dog because like I somehow heard you on a podcast or I saw you on YouTube or something. Bought some Cato boards, like got like watched your I think you had a video series on YouTube with it was a dog called Grizz
Yep.
where you
The
were doing
steadying one.
the steadying ones. And I watched those over
Yeah.
and over again. Like from that, I was like, oh wait, I don't need birds and all this stuff. Like I just in my backyard, it was like in the middle of COVID, no one was going anywhere. And I'm like, I have some
Yeah.
tennis balls, I got this little dog, I got a Cato board, like I can make this work. So it's kind of full circle for me with you now being
That's
on the show.
awesome. I love that.
So yeah, thank you for all those videos and content. That was like, I don't know, I went down a rabbit hole there and just I trained the hell out of that dog.
So
So
it's weird with those videos. I've put a few of them out there and like I always stall out because I never get any feedback on them.
oh
I feel
jeez.
like so it's like yeah, whatever. Nobody's watching them anyway. But then I hear stuff like this and like, oh,
Yeah.
it's really encouraging. I should do more of that. So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, like in those I saw, I would see other folks talk about training, and it might not just be spaniels, it could be any any breed. It might not even be bird dogs, right? But your approach was really different, I always thought, on like it seemed very positivity driven with the dogs. Like
Yeah.
they want to do this thing, just use that thing as the reward if they want to do it. And then
Yeah.
a lot of it was just like with a tennis ball. I'm like, everyone has a tennis ball. That's
Yeah.
great. How does that like kind of approach with having your dogs try to solve a problem, or even you trying to solve a problem, like in training? Does it seem like you have a standard approach? It seems like it's like, all right, here's the problem. How do I problem solve for it with a dog? Like, how does that inform your
Yeah.
training?
So can I take a step back?
Yes,
Because
please.
I'm guessing you have like a bunch of listeners who have never heard my name, which is great. Uh, and it may help to give a little bit of background, like to how I got to where I am with training now. And
Sure.
I started out with spaniels in I think I got my first one in 2008.
Okay.
So almost 17 years, actually almost 17 years ago to the date, I think. And before that, I'd had a lab, and my family had retrievers when I was growing up, not for retrieving, for pheasant hunting, but we had a golden and a couple of labs.
Right.
And I got that first cocker, brought her home, and I spent $700 on her, which seemed like a ton of money in 2008, like fresh out of
Right.
school. It was like it was probably like 20% of my net worth, spent on this little dog. And brought it home and like, oh, I needed to make it amazing. So I like right away I started pushing that dog. Like day one was training. And I thought like I didn't have any kids at the time, hadn't really ever trained a dog to a high level. And I thought like to get a dog to do something, you have to make it do it. Right. Like if we're gonna make her sit, like just gotta make her sit. And
Right.
so I just started making that dog do things because I thought that's what dog training was. And like forcing, oh, you tell them good dog, but at the end of the day, you're making them do things. And that dog, like ultimately. ended up like doing nothing basically. Like I hunted with her, but she was like such a rough shooting dog. Like never she would never retrieve a bumper or a tennis ball in her adulthood. Like just kind of just like a washed out dog. And
Mm.
I don't think she was a great dog anyway, like by those standards, but I know I didn't do her any favors. Like I reinforced that she didn't want to do those things by making her do them. And then I got another cocker that was Macy was that first one. Then I got Rocky. And about the time I got Rocky, I watched a DVD series because it was DVDs back then. It would have been 2010 by a guy named Simon Tyers, I believe, who was from the UK. And it was like a 10-hour DVD series. And I watched it probably 3 times. And my wife thought I was like an idiot, I think, because it's this guy with this really strong accent. And like at the time, like dog, now my whole life seems to revolve around dogs, but at the time it was like, what are you doing watching this video over and over and over again? And I honestly don't really remember those videos at all today because it's been so long.
Right.
Like I don't actually remember what I watched, but I know I started to figure out like how to do like simple drills and games in a mode area. And so I started doing that stuff with Rocky, but I was still like I was still making him do things. And like fast forward, I don't know, in the last probably 5 years or so, I think every dog, um, your approach evolves just a little bit. So I don't have like one system or one method that I use. And I feel like every time I get a new dog, I have to take a slightly different approach. So over the course of in the last 17 years, I don't know how many dogs I've trained, but it's probably 100 to 150 of them, somewhere in that range. Not all of them start to finish, some of them just bits and pieces, but I've probably blown a whistle for 150 dogs, let's say. And I think every single one of those like helps you just a little bit and changes how you approach things just a little bit. So where I'm at today is much more like find a way to get the dog to enjoy it, build their drive up as much as possible, like drive for a tennis ball or drive for a bumper, and then use that to get the behaviors that I want. Like that's like at its core, that's what I'm doing. So retrieve drive, build up the retrieve drive, and then okay, you want the ball, you need to give me this behavior, and then you get the ball. And like it's really like that simple. The hard part is figuring out like the baby steps to get there and also going slowly enough. Like if we go back to that first dog or that first spaniel I had named Macy, I didn't really take any baby steps. It was just like day one, like here we go. And her birthday, I think her birthday was in July, if I remember right, maybe June. And I know like that November I was hunting her. And now I would never do that because it creates so many issues. But at the time it was like, she's 6 months old. Like, let's go for a walk and take a gun along with. And it was just so push, 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 push. Now I take more of this approach of like, okay, here's a 10-week-old puppy. What can that puppy do? I can get him to jump on a Kato board and put his butt down because he wants a cheese ball or a piece of kibble. And he's really gung ho for 2 retrieves. Perfect. Let's start there and then slowly build up. And I mean, I'm jumping all over right now, but
That's good.
like what I found is if a dog at 10 months old knows nothing but wants to learn, you can train it unbelievably quickly. But if you get a 10-month-old dog that knows everything but doesn't want to work, like I don't even honestly, I'm not very good with a dog like that because I'm not going to enjoy forcing it to do something. It's not going to enjoy being forced. Like it's kind of like, well, you're kind of washed out at that point for that intended purpose. Not that it's washed out for life, but like
Yeah.
uh, so I'm all about building that drive up, knowing that later on it'll be really easy to teach the individual skills or the more advanced skills.
You know,
So
it's that's kind of it reminds me of when my son was 7. He's 14 now. He was 7 or so. He took
okay.
tennis. He like got obsessed with tennis. Okay.
Yeah.
He went to take tennis lessons in the summer, and there was like a camp kind of thing. And there was one for little kids his age and one for like high schoolers and older middle schoolers. And all the other little kids dropped out. He wanted to keep going, and the coach was like, "Hey, I talk to the high schoolers. He can hang with them and just watch things and hit a ball every once in a while. I'm like, if you're okay with that, that's fine.
Yeah.
And the coach was also a sports psychologist. And similar to what you're saying, he goes, all right, Matt, here's what we're going to do. At about 45 minutes in, he's going to be having peak fun. I want him to say, I'm going to give you a sign, and you need to say, hey, it's time to go.
I love that. That is
And he goes,
awesome.
Mike, he told me, he's like, we want him to love tennis so
Yeah.
much that when he goes home and just thinks about it nonstop, not, I don't care if he's good or not. I want him just to love it. And that's going to fuel him to keep playing. Now, he didn't get COVID, threw a wrench in it and these other things, but
Okay.
like at the time, that's all he talked about. He'd go home and watch like the French Open all day. Like he'd watch, the whole thing and loved Roger uh, Federer and all that. You know what I mean?
Better.
Like,
Yeah.
so that, but you're saying with the dogs, it's a similar thing. It's like when they're a puppy, they're having all this fun. You get a couple good retrieves, cut it off, and they're just going to want it even more. They're going to go in that crate and think about that was
Yeah.
fun. I can't wait till we do that
Yes.
again. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's the exact same concept. And I use the sports analogy all the time because I've
right,
I have two boys that are big into sports, and I see all these teammates that get burned out and they don't want to be at practice,
right,
and like once you start seeing that, like it's over for that athlete, right? Like once they kind of resent being at practice,
right.
like you're never going to get that back for that kid. You can never get the love back. And same thing for a puppy, like, and I've seen it like early on with dogs in particular. I remember specific times where like I threw a retrieve for a puppy and it was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that anymore.
Mm,
And it seems like a little thing in the moment, but that can be a really, really big deal when a puppy decides it doesn't want to go get a retrieve because it's bored with the process. So
yeah,
avoiding that at all costs to me is like the most important thing.
yeah. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
And like what'll happen is, and I've done this too, is we like you throw a couple of retrieves and then you're like, I'm gonna throw one more, and you throw one more, and that third one doesn't go quite as well. And you're like, I don't really want to end on that, and just want to get one good one out of him. And you throw a fourth one, and then it doesn't go do the retrieve at all, maybe. And it should not have done it because that just
Right.
reinforced that this game isn't that fun. Where if you quit after the second one, like you said,
Hmm.
puppy goes back in the crate and it's thinking about like, oh man, that game was awesome. Like, I
Yeah.
can't wait till the next time.
And the next time it's hitting it with
So,
vigor and excitement because it's just like we're doing
yeah,
that thing again. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jared, what do you so Jared has how old's Bones now? 1.5 year old
He
Springer or so?
is
Almost two?
no, he's a year. He turned a year in April.
Oh, okay. I'm
Okay.
way off. Okay.
Yeah. So he turned
So
a
how
year in
does that
April.
resonate with you, Jared, and what you've been working with Bones on?
Yeah, no, I did. I mean, that was what I did. I followed you to Jordan when I first started, because I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was like, all right, I can do a 2 minute session at a time,
Yeah.
roll the ball twice, call it good. And that's basically what I did for him. And I mean, he absolutely loves retrieving. Like he goes absolutely bonkers for it. Um, and so that was my main thing, is just doing short, very short little sessions with him I still do it to this day. We do like maybe 15, 20 minutes, usually because it's so hot outside
Okay.
right now, but it's very short sessions. As soon as I think he's getting close to getting done, I'm like, all right, we're done. And then we
Yeah.
go do something else. And it's so far it's working out. He's a fantastic dog. I did hunt him this year, or his first year, so he was
Okay.
7 months, I think, when I took him. But I went into it with zero expectations. There was literally no expectations. I was like, if I didn't shoot anything over him or nothing happened, I'd be totally fine with it. Um, and for me, it worked out. He did a great job this year, but again, I had zero expectations. It was more of like, hey, we're just going to go out for a little bit and see what happens.
Sure.
Um, so it worked out for me, but again, we just hunt. I don't do any
So
like
when he was little, did it feel like you weren't doing enough? Like you're like, there's got to be more to it than this.
it. There was that, but I was like, I don't know these things, and I have people that do know these things telling me that, hey, I should do very small things, so I'm going to listen and
Yeah.
not, because there's a couple times I'm like, man, this was like a 3 minute session. I'm like, I feel like we should
Yeah.
do more, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Mm,
So it was hard for
that's
me
good
to like,
discipline.
yes, it was hard for me to stay disciplined because there was times where I was like, man, this is 3 minutes. Took me longer to
Yep.
drive here. But no, I kept with it and he seems to be doing pretty well. Like I said, he had a great first season. Um, but again, I had zero
Awesome.
expectations for going in with him.
So the my main hiccup for or hang up for hunting a dog early
Mm-hmm.
is like I mean it's totally fine that you did, but like here's the things that you could maybe see. One of course is introduction to gunfire.
Yep.
Like the dog's got to be old enough that you've introduced it to that prior to that first hunt.
Oh, we did.
And
We absolutely did.
I'm sure, yeah. And
Yeah.
but some people don't, right? They take their
Correct.
5-month-old dog out and they're introducing it to gunfire at the same time that they're introducing it to its first hunt. And
Yeah.
Ooh.
like there can be damage from that. The
Absolutely.
other thing that I will sometimes see, I think it's more with cockers than it is with springers. But if you start putting them on birds too early, you can turn them off to tennis balls and bumpers.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, this tennis ball kind of sucks compared to that bird, right?
Yep.
And and because my training relies so heavily on training them in the yard and using bumpers and tennis balls,
Uh-huh.
like I want to make sure that I protect that drive. So
No,
that
I
and
get
it
that.
sounds like you neither of those things happen for you. And I also think springers aren't quite as predisposed to being picky between birds and tennis balls
Mm.
as a
Mm-hmm.
cocker might be. But those are the main reasons. Like if your dog can go back and forth between balls and birds, no problem. And if it's been introduced to gunfire, like nothing says don't go hunt it. Um, one thing that can happen, particularly if you give them a lot of birds when they're young, is they'll turn into too much dog. Like at a year and a half to 2 years of age, they start like, okay, I got this all figured out. There's birds out, and you end up with like a dog that's hard to hold on to. Where if you spend more time building that foundation and then put them onto birds a little bit more slowly, I think then you avoid some of those control issues,
Yeah,
if that
I
makes
can,
sense.
it does. It absolutely does. I can see that. Like I said, there's a couple things I've had to kind of his range is a little far. Um
Okay.
that I noticed. We've been working on it on the off season and seem to have kind of brought it back a little bit. But there, I kind of figured there I was probably going to run into some issues if I took him hunting. I will be honest, this was my first real bird dog that I actually spent
Okay.
like legitimate money on. I was super stoked to take him. So I was that was
Yeah.
probably all his issues are
The-
mine. The issues that
and
he
you
has
shot
now are
birds and he retrieved them back to hand.
he yes, basically he dropped him at my feet, but he brought him to me.
Okay. Yeah. And you were pumped.
Oh, I was so excited. It wasn't even
Yeah,
funny.
that's
Like
awesome.
so excited.
That is
So
awesome.
his issue, I understand that his issues that he
So,
has are caused by me.
so here's like just a quick story, take what you want from it, but I find it humorous and probably interesting at the same time. So I sold a puppy to a guy, and when it was about 14, probably about almost the same age as your dog, he
Hmm.
called me up and was like, "Hey, can I come over and train with you?" He lived like a half hour away, and this was a guy who like it was a pet that he hunted with, basically, right? I mean, it was
Uh-huh.
a well-bred cocker, but he wasn't like hardcore for sure. And I was like, "Yeah, like how about come over whenever?" And back then, I had a lot more free time, so a couple days later, he shows up at my house. And I'm like, well, what do you need to work on? What do you want to train? Right. And he's like, oh, like she's, I think he said perfect. Like she's pretty well perfect. There's not really anything that we need to work on. I just kind of wanted to see some of the stuff that you do. Like, okay. I'm like, what happens if she flushes a bird or like a hen and it flies away? And he's like, oh, she just like she watches it fly away and then she goes back to hunting with me. I'm like, really? Like, did you train that? And he's like, nope, she just does that. And I knew the breeding and like there's no way that dog was good. Like, there's no way. So I'm like, all right, well, let me try something. So we're standing, I lived out in the country. I still do, but it was at a different house and there's a bunch of pasture around me and a safe area. So I got a bag of homing pigeons It just stood in the backyard and I let a homing pigeon go. And this dog tore after it and was like a speck in the distance. I mean, she probably chased for like 300 yards. And he's yelling and screaming at the dog. I'm like, dude, just shut up because she can't hear you. Like
Yeah.
it's doing no good at all right now. If she can hear you, that's actually even worse because she's ignoring you and getting
Yeah.
away with it, right? So just be quiet. So it was it was a summer day, a little bit warm. So after a little bit, she came back and her tongue's hanging out. And he's got like veins popping. He's like really flustered at this point. And before he could grab her, I grabbed another pigeon out and I let it go again real quick. And she took off and chased it again. She she chased it for probably like 150 yards and then came back. And I think I gave her one more. And then he caught her and he's like, I don't understand. Like she didn't I've never seen her do that. And the reason was because when he hunted her the previous fall, which he had
Uh-huh.
done, it was like taking a 12-year-old kid out to do something new where they're a little bit insecure
Yeah.
and like you're like their confidence comes from you, right? So they're of course they're not going to go too far away from you because they don't understand the game, they don't like any of that. So you can be lulled into thinking, oh, this dog is just naturally going to hunt close to me and is so in tune with me. But then you take them out when they're a year and a half old, and now that's like an 18-year-old kid and they're like, yeah, I don't need you anymore. Turns out I can just go like self-fulfill everything and I don't need you because they weren't actually trained to like hunt with you and stay with you. They were just doing it because they were immature. So
Mm.
I would guess, Jared, like especially if you're saying your dog's starting to hunt out a little bit too far already, like
Yeah.
that's something you're going to want to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah.
And probably like dial that in before she starts finding birds. It's a she, is that right?
No, it's a he.
Or he?
Yeah.
He, okay.
Yeah.
Probably dial that in a little bit before he starts finding more birds out to the front.
Yeah.
Because what happens, you take that dog hunting and it's running a little bit too big, and then it finds a bird 45 or 50 yards out in front of you, and you start conditioning that, where it's like, yeah, I hear Jared whistling for me, but I know there's birds out here, and all of a sudden you got a dog that's hunting 70 yards out to the front, which is too far, right? So dialing it back in now while the dog is still a little bit young would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, I started doing that actually because I noticed I think one of the not one of our last hunts, but it was towards the end of the season. Me and Matt decided to try a hun hunt, which was a
Okay.
little more open than we noticed.
We kind of supercharged the range on that one for him because
Yeah,
the dog could
Bones
see for
was
about 50 miles.
yeah,
Okay.
Bones looked like a pointer. He was out there. But so I've because of that, I've started to read him like I started reading him in again. So now he's when I'm out in the field with him, he's during the summer right now, anyways. But he's
Okay.
working on that was my main thing is this summer and stuff is just his range. And
Yeah.
it seems to be working pretty well. But again, he also has, like you said, that confidence thing in the beginning where he didn't really hunt that far from me because
Yeah.
he wasn't super confident in his abilities. But I'm hopeful for
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah, I
You'll
kind of
be
think
fine. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I kind of think what happened there too, Jared, is like the first part of the season, like first 3 quarters of the season, like Jared and I went out a lot together. I took my adult springers with his the dog and
Okay.
we hunted really thick wetland type cover, and they can't range out. They're not going to, right?
That's right.
And then
Yeah,
towards the end of the season, we're like, there's just like, ankle high cheatgrass for miles. And he's just like, all
Yeah.
right, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
This looks awesome. I'm gonna go. So I think we
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, supercharged that range
yeah,
at the end because he was awesome up until then. But the
yeah.
cover was
Okay.
thick, 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 thick.
Okay. Do you want to talk like what I would do with a dog that's running a little bit too big? Would that be helpful?
I'm sure
Absolutely.
we're not the only ones with that issue.
Yes,
Yeah,
Especially when it
probably
comes to
not.
amateur just bird hunters. There's a lot of us out there who are like, my dog
yes,
is way too far. I'll call my dad out. I'm sure he's listening. He has a lab pup. It's about the same age as my Springer, about 2, and he's always
Okay.
trying to get her range in and struggles with it. So
Yeah.
I know we're not the only ones.
Yeah. So, and my story on that, this is gonna be like a bunch of reminiscing on this podcast, I think, like seeing the questions you had for me. But my first dog was this yellow lab that was out of field trial lines. And I was like, I was probably 12 years old and I bought him. Like I think he was $300. I still remember that because that was a ton of money in that was like mid 90s, right?
Right.
And way too much dog. Brought him home, ruined his retrieve drive right away, but had no clue what I was doing. And then took him hunting, and he was an absolute monster hunting. Like, but he would also try to eat the birds if he got them first. So it was always like a race to get to the
Yeah.
bird. But back then, uh, e-collars came out, and it was the little was it Tritronics that had the one that
Yeah.
was the transmitter was like a 1.5 inch by 2 inch thing. They were
Oh, I
really,
remember
really
that one.
small.
I had an old
There was
one my
one that
dad had was like this big, like
oh yeah,
a foot
after
tall. Yeah.
those, the high tech one, it was just this tiny little transmitter. And I think you could actually open it up and adjust the sensitivity on the transmitter, which was a new thing at the time.
Oh, wow.
But that original lab, his name was Cato as well. And he was the original Cato. And he would like one, he would hunt too far, but then he would get on a bird and his nose would go thump, 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 like almost like a hound. He was just sucking it in. You could hear his nose thumping.
Hmm.
And he would take off after like on the scent and you could yell. I don't think I used the whistle at the time because like this was in the 90s. We had no clue. Like it was just that was a different time. No whistle, yelling at the dog, dog's not listening, then hitting the transmitter. And I remember him like turning his head sideways because of the intensity and running through it, which now I'm like, oh, that's so horrible. But at the time, we didn't know any better. Like, I just thought, well, but it didn't stop him. Like, he wanted the bird
Right.
that badly. So that kind of scars you for life, where then you think, like, a bird hunting dog is this thing that you're always in conflict with. And, like, how do I,
Mm,
like, it's like you're
Yeah.
nervous about taking it into birds because you know it's going to punch out too far and flush the birds wild. So you're like trying to change directions and
yeah.
keep the dog extra close because you know it's going to slowly like keep building and building and then it's going to be out of range. But you hope you find the birds before the dog is out of range. And so that's where I started out. Rocky and Breeze were my first like really good cockers, and I had some control issues with them, I would say. Um, Now I spend a lot more time in the yard, like building a connection, building a bond. Um, I don't put myself in competition with dogs, and I think that's really, really key. So if a dog thinks that it's competing with you for the prize, it's not gonna want to stick with you. Like it's
Oh,
gonna it's gonna pull.
Right.
So
yeah.
you guys both watched the Grizz steadying video that I did.
Yep.
And the to me the big thing in that video is I'm not competing with Grizz for that retrieve. I'm just showing Grizz how to do it so that he can get the retrieve. But the guys that want to go out and pick up a bunch of retrieves and steal them from the dog, like they're putting themselves in like a position of competing with that dog. And they're being a bit of a jerk about it, right? Like guys will go
Yeah.
out, stare the dog in the eyes, pick up the dummy, take it back. Like it's totally like they're giving the dog the bird, right? Like like figuratively, like look who's in charge. I just picked it up, right? Well, you sit your butt there. I took it, right? And dogs like they understand that. And I've had people say like dogs aren't really like competitive, like that's a human thing. And like
They
I
are.
so strong I so strongly disagree with that. Like if you take multiple dogs out, even just on a free run, there are certain dogs that have to be in the front, right?
Yep.
They're acutely aware of what the other dogs are doing and they
Yeah.
want to beat the dog, like beat the dog to the front, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
So if in our training, we're putting ourselves as competition with that dog, like why is it going to want to hunt with us and stay close to us? So I think that's one key piece. Like I want the dog to think that like I don't think dogs think in terms of team, but I
Sure.
kind of want that in human terms, I want that dog to think that we're a team. Like we can do this together. I'm not competing with you. I want you to be successful. Like the dog's successful, I'm successful. So that's part of it. Doing the drills in the yard, most of my drills are really like me focused. Like, there's the ball. Here's what, like, look at me. Here's what I'm going to have you do. When you do that, then you can have the ball. Okay. So everything is kind of flowing through me, but they're still ultimately getting what they want. And I think that's really, really key. It's more of like building their mind structure so they think in those terms. So like, okay, this is what I want. What does Matt want me to do in order to get that? So they're trying to understand what you want so that they can get what they want, as opposed to
Yeah.
that's what I want. I got to get it before Matt gets it. Or that's what I want. I can't think about anything else. I want them thinking, that's what I want. What do I have to do in order to get it? And that starts with a puppy, it starts in the yard, but builds. And so even my adult dogs, like I'm still doing drills like that where it's really me focused. Everything flows through me. The dog still ultimately gets what it wants. So then when we get to the field, we start conditioning behaviors that way. Like if I'm in training with that dog out in the field and I'm having some control issues where that dog is running 35, 40, 45 yards out to the front and it's out of range. The last thing I want to do is condition that by letting it find birds out there.
Hmm.
I want it I want it thinking that I'm still the puppet master and I still know what's best, right? So I'm gonna keep I'm if I'm using birds, and I could do this with bumpers or tennis balls too, but I'm gonna keep them in my bag. And when the dog starts getting out too far, I'm just gonna roll it in close and then hold my ground, pull the dog back in, and then put it on that bumper or put it on, maybe it's a clipping bird or it's a dead bird that you shot or something like that, and let the dog find it in close to me. And then the dog starts thinking like, oh man, that guy really like he knows, right? Like if I work with him, I'm gonna find things. Um, so that's a real. I always felt when I was trialing, like that was the fine line that you walk. Like you don't want your dog so sticky that it looks boring, sticky at like running too tight,
Hmm.
but you also don't want it running out too far. So if the dog is running too tight, I'm gonna plant birds or plant bumpers for it and run it into the wind so it smells it and then boom, blows it out down the course, right? And I can start to open them up that way. But if the dog's running too big, then I don't want them to find birds out to the front. So then I'm going to roll them in. So that can go back and forth from one training session to the next with the same dog. So one day you're having control issues. So we're rolling in the object. The next day, the dog's running too close. So then we're putting birds out or bumpers out in the field. And that can get really like you'll have dogs that start to the smart ones will start to figure you out. They're like, well, you haven't even been out in the field yet. I know you didn't put anything out there. So today's a roll-in day, right? So I'm just gonna like hop around in front of you and just keep looking at you, trying to catch that you rolled one in, right? Or that you're about to roll one in. So then you might like, sometimes you take the bumper out in your hand so they can see it, but you still make them just quarter and you don't roll it in. Because the last thing you want to do is reinforce that, right? Like you don't want them to be looking at you, trying to catch you, rolling something in, and then you roll it in because you just reinforce that behavior. So maybe we just pull the bumper out or we pull the bird out and we just hold it, but we still make the dog hunt and it never gets that bird. Or I might go out in the field and I might even like put a little bit of scent out in the field, like put a few feathers out there or something, but not leave a bird out there and then come back in and get the dog and run it. And then it thinks for sure like it's got you figured out. Like you were out in the field, I can smell birds, there's birds here and it's running too big, but there's nothing out there. And then I'm rolling in birds. Or if the dog's like really, really sticky, maybe you put it at heel, walk it down the field, and as you're going down the field, you drop a bird in, you let the dog see it, right? Go to the end of the field, turn around and hunt right back into that bird, and that can help open it up. So you're it's always like going back and forth, like too big, too tight, too big, too tight. I think most hunters are going to have issues early on. They're going to have issues with it being too tight, and they're going to wish the dog hunted bigger. And then pretty soon they're going to wish so bad that they could go back to when that dog hunted too tight. Like be
Yeah.
careful what you wish for because it is coming. Like once that dog starts to figure it out. So knowing most dogs once they reach maturity are going to hunt too big. Like I I want to try to make sure I'm in control of the object as much as possible in training. Obviously, when you go out hunting, like that's completely different. Although if you are successful and shoot a bird early on, you can always use that bird for training throughout the day. You know, the dog's hunting too big, just roll in that bird that you harvested early on and suck the dog in and let it find it. And you can kind of turn it into a training session, right? Like the dog doesn't necessarily have to know that, well, today we're hunting and tomorrow it's training.
Right.
Yeah,
The more you can make it so that training feels like hunting and hunting feels like training, the more consistency you're going to have from one to the next.
makes sense.
They're just trying to stay one step in front of the dog. Like I'm trying to figure out what their expectations
Yeah.
be based on the patterns you've built and then adjusting those as needed. Like
Yeah.
it,
And everybody wants there to be, especially like, just like dogs, like there's all different types of personalities. Within humans, there's all types of different personalities. And
Hmm.
I find there's like certain people and a lot of them have like a certain vocation, which I'm not going to go there and say that on here because you know, it's not even a bad thing, but like some people are very, very literal and they want it to be like, well, what's the process? So, okay, so I need to do this. And then what's the next step? Okay, that. And then they want it to be completely linear. They want it to be spelled out perfectly, and they want the dog to follow each one of those
right.
steps, right? The problem is dogs aren't like there are some dogs for sure that could but that's a one-off, right? The majority of dogs, it's not going to be a linear process, and it's also not going to be the same as the next dog. Like they're all going to be a little bit different. So the the analogy I like to use, you guys both have kids?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you have your first kid and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this thing, right? Well, oh joy, there's like a million different books that you can read on parenting, right? Like I didn't read a single one of them, but my wife read some of them, and then she would tell me, well, this book said whatever. And but they all like there's literally thousands and thousands of books on parenting. None of them are the same, right? And none of them, I'm sure some are better than others, but none of them can guarantee an outcome
Mhm.
because all kids are different. And it's
Hmm.
really a case by case thing. And like if there was just one right way to parent, then everybody would read that same book and every kid would turn out to be a doctor or an attorney or whatever, right? Like successful in life. But the reality is there's thousands of books, there's good kids, there's kids that like I guess don't turn out for lack of a better way to put it. Like there's kids that don't reach their full potential. There's
Right.
some that
Yes.
do reach their full potential. When you think about dogs, it's so similar. Like there's a thousand different books out there on dog training. There's a bunch of bad dogs, or maybe not bad dogs, but dogs that didn't reach their full potential, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And and then there's some dogs that did reach their full potential. And like so I think like what makes us better as trainers is adapting to the dog in front of us. So using some overarching principles for sure. Like I don't think you want to just be blindly like doing this. So have some overarching principles, but then adapt and like, okay, well that didn't work. Let's pivot and try this. Like, oh, that didn't work. Let's pivot and try this, and just be constantly problem solving. And even then, it's not a guarantee that the dog is going to reach its full potential. Like, I think some dogs are just like not a great fit for some people.
Mm.
And if it was
Yeah.
with somebody else, it might have been great and vice versa. And that's just reality. Doesn't mean you can't still have success with that dog. It's just
Right.
some dogs are going to be more of a challenge than others. But the I'm again jumping all over here, but I what I struggle with, like even posting the videos that you've seen, is people watching those videos and then taking them extremely literally and
Mm.
thinking, well, oh, so that's what Jordan does in his training sessions. And sometimes those videos are like, that's the first time I've ever done that, and I've never done that again with it. But at the time, it made sense for that dog.
Hmm.
But I'm definitely like all those videos that you've watched, I'm not doing that same thing over and over and over again with that dog. Like there are very, very few things that I'll repeat for a long period of time with the dog because I mean, if it's actually working, then it should have worked a lot faster. If it's not working, then I need to be doing something else. And there's also the piece of like we're just trying to like build rapport and get that dog to understand me and for me to understand that dog. So the more new things that we can do, the more we have to work together, right?
Yeah.
Like if I do a drill and the dog figures it out and knows how to do it, if I keep doing that drill, I'm not building teamwork. The dog can do it on its own now because it figured it
Right.
out. The way I build teamwork is where I introduce something new. And it doesn't, it's not so much the drill itself as much as it is that dog just having to work with me and figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's why I was originally attracted to some of your videos you posted, whenever I saw those. But it was like, oh, it's not just, it's more of like a mindset around training. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, now try this and then try that. And you got to, nothing seemed worse to me for dog training when I was first getting that first cocker of like, oh, do the same thing over and over again every day. Like that sounded like torture. So to see this thing is
Yeah.
like, oh, I just kind of roll with it and see what happens and be creative and try to figure out, read the dog and figure that out. That was way more fun. And maybe
Well,
other people, because
think
you're saying other folks might not be into that kind of thing. They want the procedure, but it was super
it's
attractive
not
to
probably not
me.
going to work. Think about your kids. Like if you just
Yeah.
did the same thing over and over and over every day, they would hate you, right?
Right.
They would eventually be like, "Dad, you're terrible. Like we need some variety in our life. Like this is not helping us get better to do the same thing every
Right.
single day." And I don't think dogs are really any different.
Is it
But
also
yeah,
the trainer, or I guess with the kid metaphor, the parent, where the way you train is also dependent on the trainer's personality and how they want to act? Like
yeah,
you
no
Jordan
doubt.
might be very different from me, and if you're at my house and saw my dog, you might go, "Oh, try this," but maybe that thing wouldn't work coming from me. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Do you ever look at that
yeah,
with
definitely,
trainers?
definitely. Because a dog, like a good dog for me might be not a good dog for you,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Like, I mean, like, oh, look at this thing. It's amazing. And you're like, I could never live with that thing. Or like the people that are like, oh, they watch my dogs do drills and they're like, that's amazing. Like can you do that with my kid, right? You've heard that before, probably.
Yeah.
Or or I've heard like my kid or my dog. I'm like, no, I don't train pets. Like I'm not very good at like getting a dog to just like chill out on its bed next to the couch while you watch TV because that's not really my thing.
Right.
There's some people that are really really good at that. That's just not my thing. Um and yeah, like go so like people are different, dogs are different.
Hmm.
There's no like there's no like one defining thing that says like, oh, that's a well-trained dog
Right.
or even like that guy's a good trainer. Like it's all in dog training is weird. Like anybody can hang a shingle out by the road saying they're a dog trainer and like
Yeah.
voila, they're a dog trainer, right?
Yeah.
It's a really ambiguous thing, really. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but we are just kind of operating in this gray space where like if you field trial, that's probably going to be the closest you can come to having like a defined objective
Right.
of like what a well-trained dog is probably. But even that can be a little bit of a gray area. But like in the hunting dog slash pet space, like I don't know, what's a good hunting dog and what's a good pet? Like different for different people. I would say
Yes.
like maybe some of the consistent things there would be like a dog that retrieves the hand or at least drops it at your feet, right? Like recovers game for you. I
Yeah.
would prefer I would prefer it brings it back to hand. I've had dogs that don't. I have had dogs that have brought back live birds and then dropped them. And I can only think of a couple of times where this happened, but there have been times where like you lose the bird then because the dog drops it and goes back to hunting.
Yeah.
And if it had delivered to hand, so okay, delivering to hand would be a great thing. Me personally, I want them to have a really soft mouth. Like if they catch a live bird, I want that bird brought back to me alive, unhurt. Other people would be like, well, as long as the dog didn't eat the bird, like I'm okay with some tooth marks or whatever in it. But I think we could all say like, if the dog's eating the bird on the way back in, that's probably a bad thing.
Yeah.
hunting out a range, like that's going to be for a flushing dog, like that's kind of a an arguable point, right? Like, yeah, they need to hunt in range,
Yeah.
but beyond that, like I don't want my dogs to make noise. Other people might be okay with that. I've
Right.
heard people say like, "Oh, he gets so excited. Like, I just love how excited he is when he's barking, while he's hunting." I'm like, "Oh, that would drive me absolutely crazy." But that person thinks it's the greatest thing because they think it means their dog is happy and they want their dog to be happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like if for people listening to this, like just take it for what it's worth, and like that again, that's why having principles of dog training is way more important than specific drills
Yeah.
Yeah.
because your desired outcome is probably different than my desired outcome.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like I think it comes out like also like it's different versions, like expectations on
Yeah,
what you're expecting your dog to do. Like I know that like for Bones, I know that I'm not a great dog trainer, like just because I'm this is my first time. So I don't have like super I have expectations, but they're realistic. Like I know
yeah,
he's not going to be a field trial like winning dog because he does like I'll be honest, he barks at birds. And he has this weird kind of howly kind of thing he does. Okay, and I'm like, all right, it's not the
yeah.
greatest, but I'm like, okay, I get what he's doing. Um, like the last our pheasant hunt, I had a pheasant hunt with him. Where it's kind of like where I saw the light bulb kind of click for him. And he flushed the pheasant. I shot him. I winged the pheasant, and he followed that bird for I think it was like 80 yards, chasing this
Okay,
bird down, and he jumped on it. And at the time, I think Bones was probably 25 pounds, and he just
full
stood
grown
on this
cocker.
bird. Yeah, he just stood on this bird until I got to him. And I was like, okay, I feel like this is probably not the greatest thing, but I was like, because he didn't bring it to me, but at the same time, I'm like, all right, this bird is probably half the size of him. I get it, you know. But
Yeah,
I was so excited that he actually followed that bird for probably 80 yards, just chasing this thing through cattails that I
yep,
didn't care at the moment. Um,
yep.
but I was like, but he was barking the entire time, which is nice for me because at least I knew where he was.
That's awesome. It's like I have a friend who has a cocker that points, and I mean, not points well enough to be a English pointer, but points
Right.
way too well to be a cocker, sort of thing. And he loves it because he's just a hunter, and he's like,
Yeah.
it's great. Like if he's in the cattails, the dog's not gonna like hold point forever. Like it's
Right.
gonna point for 20 seconds and then it's gonna flush. So he doesn't have the problem of losing it in the cattails or having to point a bird 40 yards out in the cattails, then you got to go try to flush it.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, like the dog goes on point, he can get a little bit closer, and then it goes in and flushes it, and he thinks it's great. I'm like, who am I to say that's a bad thing? Like that's
Right.
not really what the breed is supposed to do. And in field trials, for sure, that would be an eliminating
Right.
fault. But for this guy, like yeah, he got a cocker that wants the I would say a little bit more than flashpoint, and he loved it. And like
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I can't tell him like he shouldn't like that. Like
Yeah.
it's a very personal thing, I guess, or individual thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have this thing where it's like at work, everything I do is like measured, right? And everything I do, my phone measures my sleep, my exercise, like everything is calculated everywhere. Like I like that, at least for me, my hobby of bird hunting, like I'm not measuring my dog to anything. It's like, did we go have a good time today? That's all I need. Like, were they safe? We came home unscathed, and then we have a good
Yeah,
time. We got some birds. She worked pretty well. Like for me, like that's all I really need. So like, yeah, the perfect dog. Like to what you're saying, it comes down to what folks want. And some people are like,
yeah,
I want to go do all these things and hit all the check marks and be able to show like, here's why my dog's awesome, and that's awesome. But like for me, it's like I would love to not have to prove growth and prove all these things I do in every other aspect of my life as I try to be a professional and a parent and just a person in 2025. I'd rather like, all right, I'm gonna turn all that off. I'm gonna go out into the, you know, wilderness with my dog and my shotgun
yeah,
and not think about any of that. And if I come home and go, we should work on that in the yard. Okay, we'll work on that in the yard. But I'm not gonna even try to like put a metric on it or even try to get too crazy of a goal where it's like we need to do this, 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 and this. It's like we're just gonna go chase some birds because this is our hobby and this is our
Yeah.
escape. So like
And I'm not there yet personally, but I am to the point where I can appreciate that there's people like that.
I'm
You
ready to
know?
turn all that off. Like all this like growth mindset stuff, I was like gung ho into that, and I'm just like, you know what? How much fun am I having
Yeah.
doing this? And what am I really getting out of it? And like, you asked me 2 years ago, it'd have been the complete opposite. But um, it's like, it makes sense in some parts of life, but for me, I'm like, I'm
I,
gonna turn it off on this one. I'm just not gonna worry about that in hunting.
I will say though, having a dog with retrieve drive,
Mm,
like ball drive or dummy drive,
yeah,
that is one where like, okay, that gives you something you can do over the summer, right?
yeah, oh yeah,
Like that's that one thing where it's like, okay, you may not like want this or that, but like having retrieve drive allows you to have so much more fun with that dog the rest of
yeah,
the
Oh
year.
yeah. Oh,
100%.
100%.
So that because otherwise it's like, oh, what do I go do? What do I go do in the backyard when the dog doesn't want to work with
Yeah,
me? Like, oh,
you
Yeah.
have
and
to
then
have
you don't
that.
do anything because that's not very fun. So that
Yeah, I'm not saying
that
don't
is
train.
one.
I'm just saying
Yeah, right, right.
like we're gonna train
Have to
things,
be
but
trained
I'm
for.
not gonna think about it too hard. Like I'm gonna say I know this, like Jared saying range was an issue, so he's working on that. And for me, like I don't know what I've been working on this year. I guess I've working a lot of like a lot of retrieving, but not that it's bad. But like she has this thing, like one Spaniel's staring at me here. She has this thing where a bird, maybe half the time she brings it to hand, and half the time it's like at my
Okay.
feet. And I'm like, okay. And I'm not too upset about that. But tennis balls, I don't care how muddy that ball is. And if I just wash my hands and about to eat and trying to get her inside, that ball has to go in my hand. She's like, I'm not setting this down.
Oh,
It
that's
has to go.
funny.
I'm like, that ball's nasty. Can you just please drop it on the porch and come inside?
Yeah,
And
like
she's just
pretend
like,
it's a
nope,
bird, drop it.
nope, it has to go in your hand. And I'm like, thinking you'll drop pheasants. You'll
Yeah,
quail usually make it to hand. But like pheasants, she's like, "Oh, enough, put that down. But it's just funny how that mindset is like, no, sir, it has to go to your hand. Like that
yeah,
thing's disgusting. I don't want to touch it right now. I just washed my hands. I'm about to eat some food I made. Nope. Wash your hands
that's
again.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think
Yeah.
we agree on that. So what's cool is we all have different standards, but like
Oh
we
yeah.
can still appreciate dogs. Like
Yeah,
at the end of
exactly.
the day, we can still appreciate dog training and dogs.
Oh
We
yeah.
just
100%.
maybe want different outcomes.
Well, that's why I like I said this earlier, kind of, but to expand on it, like being able to be creative with dog training, like with the mindset I kind of just talked about, like it makes that way more accessible and fun. Where if it's like follow this
Yep.
process and this procedure in this book, how to train your dog, it'd be like, I don't want to do that. Like
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, let's just try this thing out and maybe it'll work. Like you said, I tried it one time with the dog. Maybe it won't work, but we're gonna try it. And in the end, your dog at least is having fun with you and becoming more
Yeah.
attached to you and trying to problem solve itself, trying
Well,
to figure out what you're
what I
thinking.
found early on, like I'm a really competitive person by nature. I just like, and that's probably come across that I think it does usually, even if I try to hide it. And I've always wanted like the best dog, right? So I'm
Right.
when I got that first cocker, like I read books. I didn't have the DVD series till the second one, but I was reading books, and I think the big one that was out there was by Jim Spencer. I think it's like Hup is the name
Cup.
of it.
I have
At the
that book.
time, like that was the book, right?
Yep,
Okay, yeah,
I
Right
there
have
it
here.
that
is on
book.
the shelf. And how many pages is it? This is terrible that I'm calling it out because it's probably helped way more people than I've ever helped. But I bet it's like 300 pages, right?
Yeah, it's got to be something like that. 270.
Okay.
There we go.
It's a bunch of pages.
Yeah.
That's an awful lot. Like all we're trying to do is get the dog to come when it's called and sit and retrieve the hand, or maybe not even the hand. And there's 270 pages. Like that's way too complicated for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And also you read the first chapter and the dog doesn't want to do those things. And like,
Yeah.
well, now what do I do? Because do I go into the second chapter when the first chapter we're not even being successful there? And that just it wasn't helpful for how my brain works to do
I
that.
mean, my
So
Yeah.
bookmark is on page 94, and that's where I stopped. So
yeah, this is terrible. I
I
don't
didn't
really
read this.
I do Yeah. I don't
I
I,
read
I
the
didn't come
entire
on here
book.
to do that, but
Yeah,
That's
did you?
not, yeah, that's not
I
how I
read the
think though.
entire book,
I
but I also watch a
I
lot of videos too.
I read a book by a guy who's now a friend named Tony. I think his last name is pronounced Rutger,
Okay.
but it looks like Rodiger. It might be Rodiger. And if Tony listens to this, I apologize right now because I should know how to pronounce his last name. But he wrote a book called Urban Gundog, and
I've heard
he
of it.
had cockers. And it's been a long time since I read that, but I do believe that was a fairly helpful book for me early on because I lived in an urban setting and I was training in a backyard. And everything I read in the magazines, like you go read the Flushing column in some of the magazines out there, and it's all about birds and having
Hmm.
people to flag the bird or flag the dog to get it to run back and forth and using birds, 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 birds. And, I look at my bank account like, yeah, I can't afford like tons and tons of birds. And I look
Yeah,
out the window and I live in the middle of town. And
Right.
like, well, that doesn't really work for me. Um, so Tony's book, I think, got me thinking along those terms
Right.
more. And then you just had like necessity is the mother of invention. That's kind of where I was at. Like I, I'm in town and this is kind of where I'm at in life right now. But I want a really nice dog, so how can I how can I do that in town? And that kind of led into, some of the videos that you've watched
Yeah.
where I'm doing more drills. Like even now I've got back here behind my office where I'm at, I have probably 5 acres of switchgrass and 2 acres of brome grass. And it's better than anything I have ever had
Hmm.
for running dogs in a field, like at home.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to do the majority of my training in my mode area because to me, that's much more productive. It's where I really build teamwork.
Right.
It's where it's easy to focus on the little things. Like when you get out in the field, it just gets big, and like
yeah,
it's hard to isolate behaviors. And like if I was gonna work on a dog delivering to hand, I'm not gonna go out in the field where there's a bunch of distractions. Like it needs to be in a yard or even like in a pen with fences up, so the dog literally has no other choice but to like engage with you.
Right.
So I've used this before, and maybe you've heard me say it, but like when I lived in town, I had to figure out like how to train there, and I did like that. I had a dog named Breeze. I don't know if you ever heard of that
I've
dog,
heard of Breeze. Yeah.
but she won the amateur nationals. She placed at the Open Nationals. She got a CM at the Open Nationals. She won like I think the biggest cocker trial ever out in North Dakota. Super accomplished dog. I trained her till she was 2 to 3 years old, like in my backyard and
Hmm.
down at the park down the street. And very few, like I think the year she took third at the Open Nationals, I believe I used less than 10 birds with her in training that year. And
Wow.
going against dogs that are having like 10 birds in a day potentially. And like
yeah,
I just didn't have that luxury. So I was training her like in a backyard and not even like a huge backyard. And took her to the Nationals, did well. I moved out to the country right about that time. And the first thing I did was I was out in the country, but I didn't have a lot of space or property that I owned. But uh, I made friends with the neighbors and got access to a lot of land. But
Hmm.
my yard was like my property was like 2.5 acres, and I turned the whole thing into a yard. Like I mowed it all. And like there was a spot that was taller grass, probably an acre in the back, and I just turned it all into yard because I actually wanted to make sure that I wasn't like upending my training process. Like, okay,
yeah,
this is what got me there, training in a mowed yard. Like, I
Hmm.
want to make sure that I still focus on that. So even now that I
Right.
have more space and I actually have a bird pen now, um, I still don't use them very often because I just don't think it makes like I don't think it helps the teamwork so much. Like birds are like they are so exciting on their own. that you're always trying to like, hey, remember me, right? But they're like, forget you. That bird is awesome.
Yeah,
Um, so if you're trying to teach a dog something with birds, that's a really, really tough way to teach a dog. I would much rather teach it with a tennis ball and then proof it with a bird.
right.
Um, like that's kind of a, I don't ever really want the dog to be learning with a bird, other than learning like how to take out a runner or something like that.
Yeah,
But I don't want to be teaching it a trained skill with a bird because it's like, I mean, it's like crack for an addict, right? That bird is like their brain starts spinning and they get excited. Like that's a terrible mindset to be learning.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
I, tr- I really just let's just learn in the yard all the skills we need, and then let's just go proof it out in the field and make sure that it transitions basically.
I mean, that's got to be, hopefully that's reassuring to a lot of like our listeners out there because it's intimidating when you kind of get into the if you want to get your first bird dog, let's say, and you're looking at any of them, it could be flush or point or whatever, but and you start getting into YouTube and podcasts and books and magazines, and it's you feel like you have to
So
have all these
complicated.
birds and resources and land to do all this,
Yes.
but
yeah.
people hopefully can hear that and think and realize like you don't need to. Like you
But
can still get it done without all that. You can have it just
ultimately,
going through
like
your yard.
if you can take that dog off leash and call it in, like that's
That's true.
that's a
Yeah,
great starting point, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
Yeah.
all the a dog that quarters perfectly and all that stuff, like great, you can work up to that, but like so many dogs out there now, they can't even take it off leash, right? Like you see the dog slips the collar and people freak out because
Hmm.
the dog, like, well, okay, you can't go hunting with that dog. So like for your listeners, like that dog does need to like be engaged with you.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
And those games like create that engagement, right? Like I can go into my kennel and take out any dog and I'm not worried that like I'm gonna lose it or it's gonna run
Hmm.
off.
yeah,
And I think that's really, really important. But
Yeah.
that's also because my dogs don't hate me,
Right.
and they want to be with me because like we do things together.
yeah.
And
You're fun.
those things might just be out in the yard, not necessarily out in the field. In fact,
Yeah.
usually they are in the yard.
There's I'm trying to think who says it. It might have been you, or I know I've heard it. I think on the Birdshot podcast, but a lot of guys say like if it can't do it in the short grass, it's not going to be able to do it in the long grass.
I think that's me. If it wasn't me, it's
Yeah.
somebody that copied me. I'm
No,
just
I
kidding.
mean,
It's
but
not.
no, but that's always resonated with me just because it's like, well, that makes perfect sense. Like if I can't do
Yeah.
it in a grass field, I can't do it in,
But
a field with grass and or trees and birds and all sorts of other stuff.
yeah. One of the like I think one of the very first articles that I ever wrote, and I'm not like a writer or anything, but I have written more since then. But I think it was probably the very first one. I called it like the 10-foot circle. And it was like just a made up thing because I hadn't really ever vocalized or verbalized that before. But
Yeah.
I was like, if your dog can't do it within 10 feet of you, it's not going to do it when it's 20 feet away or 30 feet away.
Oh
So
yeah.
Yeah.
like just get everything right in that 10-foot circle. Like if the dog is 8 feet away and you call it and it won't come to you, it's not going to come to you when it's 30 yards away, right? Like
Yeah.
let's be
That's
real
good.
here.
Yeah.
And like if you tell it to sit when it's in front of you and it won't sit, it's not going to sit when it's 20 yards away. Like
Yep.
Yeah.
like distance erodes control. It just does.
Yep.
So if you can't get it in a, so a lot of people like they take their dog in the backyard and it's chaos. And but then they take the dog out into the field and give it birds, and they think somehow the dog is gonna magically like
Yeah.
be this beautiful
Mm.
hunting dog. Like, no, no, it doesn't work that way. Like
No.
getting it right in your yard is so important and like
Yeah.
should be the starting point for pretty much everyone.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Makes a ton. I haven't heard that 10-foot thing. I'm messing up with the
No, I just
article,
made
but
it
no.
up for that one
No,
article.
that's so
That's
smart though. That's so like for a lot of folks out there, it's like yeah, like that's just gives people focus, right? Like, all right, just I gotta start small and just do this. Like it can seem so overwhelming to think I have to have this dog out in the field this season, next season, whatever, doing this stuff with this little puppy. How do I get there? It's like just working inside that 10-foot circle, like get it
yeah.
coming to you there and push it out from there. It makes I don't know that just it breaks it down, like just that concept. I think has to break it down in folks' minds when they
And
hear
for
that.
some reason, it's weird to me how we like approach these dogs. We're like, okay, I want them to do this. Like, I want them to be doing this out in the field, so that's what I'm going to train, right?
Right,
And we don't do that in other areas of life, but for
right.
some reason we do that with dogs. So
Yep.
another analogy that I'll use, and there's going to be a couple people that are going to make fun of me because they've heard me use this before, and they're going to listen to this podcast and message me, but I think it's a good one. So when we like with our kids, when they're 4, 5, 6 years old, we ultimately want them someday to be reading at a collegiate level, right? Like reading, understanding, be able to process it and actually like do something with that, right? So like good readers. But that doesn't mean at 5 years old we put a college textbook in front of them and tell them to start reading. And then when they struggle with it, we put it in front of them again and like, no, we're just going to keep doing this until you figure it out, right? Like that's that's stupid, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody teaches a kid how to read that way. Instead, like we all understand the process of teaching them the alphabet song, then teaching them that the alphabet song actually has meaning and that those noises they're making are actually letters, right? And then they learn to visually identify those letters that they've been singing about. And
Right.
then they learn that they have a sound associated with them and then they combine them and then they sound out a small word and then a little bit bigger word and then they read like right it's this and I don't like modern school today maybe that's not how they do it but like that's
Sure.
pretty much how we all understand how reading works, right? It's like it's baby steps. And that's with a human who has a much bigger brain than a dog. A human has a much greater capacity to learn than a dog does, obviously, or should anyway. And then we take this puppy, and instead of following the process that we use with our kids, instead we just like throw the college textbook at them. Like, well, this is what you're supposed to do, so this is what we're gonna do until you figure it out. Like, that's a it's a terrible approach, and like it's frustrating for the dog. Eventually, the dog is gonna, just like your kid would eventually be like, I hate reading or attempting
Yeah.
to read. I am not going to do this, Dad, right? Like you can put it in front of me as much as you want, but I hate it and I'm not going to do it, right? Like 99.9% of kids, like that would be the ultimate outcome if that was your approach to reading, right?
Hmm.
Same thing for a dog. Like we throw too much at them and we just keep trying it, trying it, trying it. Like a lot of those dogs are going to be like, I don't understand. This is frustrating. You're frustrated at me. Like there's nothing, I'm not getting any warm fuzzies here. I don't want to do this anymore. Right. Where if you take that same dog and just start it like little baby steps and slowly build your way up to it, like that builds confidence, right? Like understanding builds confidence. Confusion does not build confidence. And like understanding and being successful, like is enjoyable, right? Even for us as humans, right? Like when we accomplish something and understand something, it's like this, yeah, that was awesome. I think very similarly for a dog, like when they do something and they know they did it right, like it builds confidence because success builds confidence, but two, like it creates like a desire to do more of it. Like I'm good at that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't for dogs like being able to do that, like break it down into little small pieces, make sure the dog is successful, do it within that 10-foot circle, and then slowly expand on that. But it's like it's not a race. And for some people, for some reason, a lot of people think it's like a race. You know, like just like with kids, we're like, oh, my
Yeah.
7 year old is in travel league baseball, and like he's amazing, you know, and he hit a home run. Like, yeah, okay, I saw the video. It was like an infield home run, right? But like whatever.
It's a
Right,
single
you
with
know what I'm
three
talking.
errors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That wasn't actually a home run. That was like an error. That's it goes as an O on the record. But they're all about like pushing so early. It's the same thing with the with dogs. It's like what is the hurry? Like why does your dog need to be doing a 40-yard retrieve when it's 4 months old? Like maybe for some dogs, like great, like I for sure I've had 4 month old dogs that are at that point where like they have that kind of drive and that confidence and I'll give them a couple of longer retrieves. But there's a lot of them where like they're just not there. And If I throw it 40 yards, they're going to go 20 yards, and then they're going to start smelling the dandelions, and they're going to forget everything that they were doing. Like that
Yeah.
is that's so counterproductive to do that because the dog wasn't successful, and it's not going to create more success next time. It's actually going to hurt me next time. So I would be much better off throwing that retrieve 10 feet and having the dog be successful than throwing it 10 yards or 30 yards and having the dog fail. I'm like, that's fine. There's no shame in throwing a 10-foot retrieve or a 15-foot retrieve. I don't care. Like I just want the dog to be successful and like create more drive and more confidence because ultimately like that's what I can build off of.
I
Yeah. No,
wonder,
makes sense.
I wonder if folks like the retrieve makes sense, right? Because you see that that's a hunting thing. Your dog retrieves, but
Yep.
like your average Joe hunter, like do they are when they see things like place or when they see things um like just anything that's not like, oh, that's a hunting activity, is that
Yeah.
where the gap is? Like when we do the read analogy is really good because it's like with the retrieving, because it's like, yeah, books are made of sentences, which are made of words, which are made of letters, like learn the letters. But if I say, oh, here's a puppy, try to teach it how to place, but they're not seeing that that's like a skill of how to learn versus people are not connecting those dots from those little things they should be doing in the beginning or throughout to like the finished product of what a dog does in the field. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I wonder if there's a disconnect there where they're
Yeah,
not
for
seeing those
sure.
things
Like,
connect.
hey, I'll tell you the first time I used we called them place boards, right? And we made them out of two by fours and a sheet
Yeah.
of plywood. Now we call them Cato boards, right? It's the
Right. Everyone
Kleenex.
does. Yeah.
But yeah, right. But back in like 2013 or 14, a friend of mine that I'd met through field trialing was like, "Hey, I started using place boards," and he's like, "It's amazing. You should try them." And I remember thinking like that doesn't, his name is Steve, is Steve. Like that doesn't make any sense, Steve. Like I want my dog like hunting hard and like
Yeah.
hunting. And like how does a platform help my dog with that? That makes absolutely no sense, right? And I remember thinking that and telling him that. And it took a long time before I finally had some scrap wood and threw one together and put it out in the yard. And I had no clue what I was doing with it. Um,
Right.
and it's, I mean, it's such a journey dog training is. Like if I mean that was 10 or 11 years ago, and I think to how my training and so many people's training has evolved in that 10 to 11
Hmm.
years. But now it's so much like I just want that dog to work with me, not so much like
Right.
what it's doing as much as how it's doing it. Like, and by how it's doing it, like how it's interacting with me, right? Like I if a dog will go make a 150-yard retrieve, but it won't make eye contact with me, like, I'd probably rather the eye contact than the 150-yard retrieve. Like I just,
Yeah.
like so now it's so, and you've probably seen some of my more recent videos, like how I introduced them to the Cato board, and
Hmm.
like it's so I'm still not making, and on the first time I started using platforms, there was a pretty well-known Springer trainer who I won't mention, but he said the way that they get dogs to go on a platform, this is terrible, but I think now, but they would clip two leashes on the dog, and they'd have so put a collar or just a flat collar on, clip two leashes on, and one person take one leash and the other person take the other leash, and you have the platform in the middle, and you basically like pull the dog back and forth and like create all this instability, and then when the dog's feet got on the platform, you stop pulling on the leashes, and you like make the dog. This is for real. Like this is what this trainer was doing, and
Yep.
Right.
it's somebody that you know
I know
or have
exactly what
heard of.
video you're talking about. I know exactly what video you're talking about.
I haven't even seen the video. I was just told to do this.
Yeah.
And it was like they'll learn that when they get on there, all the friction and craziness stops, right? So it's like an escape thing to jump on the platform, right? That's
Right.
100% what it was. I'm gonna
Yep.
escape, or it's like an aversion thing. I'm gonna hop on there and then the chaos stops. I'm like, that it seemed crazy to me at the time. Like,
Yep.
what? I don't- like so I want I want the dog to like want to jump on the platform because it wants to. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
not with its tail down, like trying to get away from something. Like I just want it to jump on the platform. And like if it'll do that, then that starts that whole reading progression of like, okay, now I can put down two Cato boards and I can get this 10-week-old puppy to want to run back and forth between the two Cato
Right.
boards. And then I can put a third one down, or then I could go into steadiness. But like all the time, I have right now I have five Springer puppies here that are 4.5 months old. And it's been I've done this at other times in my life. It's always been a bad decision to have this many puppies, but it's been a while, so I forgot the amount of work it is. But man, if like it is such an eye opener to have this many like litter mates and to be working with them individually and like seeing the different personalities and strengths and everything. Like, man, you really start to see how every dog is different
Oh, that's crazy.
it, when you keep that many, right? Like they're so different. But I have because I have easy access to Cato boards, like really, really easy access to them.
Yeah.
I have a ridiculous amount of them around my property. And there's one that's out on where I take those puppies for a walk multiple times a day. There's a Cato board like right in the path because we go out there and do launcher work. And I will see those five puppies like as they go running by it, they'll like veer their course and they'll like maybe they just run right over it. Sometimes they stop and look around for a second and then keep going, but they'll almost all go at least make some sort of contact with that Cato board as they go by on their run. And it's completely of their own will. Like they're just doing it because they have so many happy memories associated with that
Yeah.
platform, right? Like this is
Yep.
where I get a treat and this is where I've got retrieves in the past and like I just want to go touch it. And when they have that, like then I can like that'll go with them for life. Like I can use that to teach remote sitting and I can use it
Hmm.
for handling and quartering and steadiness and all those things. And that's where like that reading, like, yeah, I'm not gonna ever take a Cato board with me out to the field when I go hunting, but there is a direct connection to like that first time the puppy gets on a Cato board to a finished hunting dog a year and a half down the road because the Cato board is like that tool that we start learning hand signals. Like, when I first started, two things. One, I'm trying to that dog Breeze. I was not using platforms when I started training Breeze. I didn't because she was born in 2012, so she was like 2 years old when she first got on a
Yeah.
platform. And when she was about a year old, I would try to get her to sit remotely, like 20 yards away or 10 yards away, and I had taught her to sit at my feet, and she was great about that, but she wanted to be sitting at my feet. So if she was 10 yards away and I tapped the whistle or told her to sit, she would want to run into my feet and then sit. And I'm just trying to figure this out on my own. Like, how do I like communicate to this dog to sit out there? And it wasn't like she was trying to be bad.
Right.
There was just confusion, right? Like, not only was sitting, putting your butt down, sitting to her was also being in proximity to me.
Yep.
So I put a check cord on her and put it around a tree and then told her to sit. And when she tried to run back into me, I just stopped her with the check cord because it was going around the tree.
Right.
And eventually it worked, but like there was so much like confusion and pressure from that.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't right, and when I never did that with another dog because it just like I didn't have anybody mentoring me at the time. I was just figuring it out. But at the time I was like, and it kind of worked, but like that wasn't a fun process. And I could tell how confused she was. With the platforms, like they learn how to sit on a platform, not at my feet. So then as that platform moves farther and farther away,
Hmm.
like I can now have a 6-month-old puppy that will run 10 or 20 yards and sit on a platform, that far away from me. And there's no pressure at all. And then
It's
when
fun.
you
Yeah.
remove the platform, like they've already been so comfortable sitting at a distance, like it's okay. The other piece, you take a little puppy and you try to give it a hand signal. Like maybe you want it to, as you're quartering down the field or trying to quarter down the field, and you're telling it to get out and you're putting your hand out to the side, right? I'm waving my arms here because we can see each other, but I know your listeners can't see this. So this is just for you guys. But you're sticking your arms out to the side trying to get the dog to go. On my early dogs, like they look at my hand, like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your hand? Right? Like that's not intuitive for a dog to know to go in the direction that you point your hand.
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
So with the platform, with this little like 10-week-old puppy, I can have them starting to take hand signals to go to a platform just to get a piece of kibble. But they're already learning that like my hand going off to the side means to go in that direction. No pressure, didn't have to force them to do it. They want to do it. Like, and pretty soon those puppies, if you put two cattle boards down and just stand there, a lot of times they'll just offer the behavior on their own, jumping back and forth between the two platforms and just overlay some hand signals with it, and pretty soon you have a, a relatively young puppy that understands the concept of taking a hand signal, which for quartering or for a blind retrieve is going to be important. So that's like, yeah, that's that whole reading progression. Yep, you take a little puppy, and when it hops on a platform, it gets a treat. Pretty soon, it associates hopping on there with that treat, so it starts offering the behavior on its own. Then you ask for a little bit more. Maybe it's to sit, maybe it's to go to a second platform, and then you just like slowly increase the requirements. But all along, you're not like forcing it to do that. It's offering the behavior because of what it gets, like because it gets a
Yeah.
retrieve or because it gets a piece of kibble. Typically with a young dog, it's going to be kibble. With a older dog, it's more going to be a retrieve for me anyway. And same with reading, like if you just keep telling the kid to read, but you're forcing him to do it, he's not going to like to read, right? But if he all of a sudden starts being able to read like a really simple book, like that's a really exciting thing for a kid, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
If you framed it up correctly, because like that's
Right.
empowering for a kid to like do that on their own and like figure that out, right? And if you cultivate that the right way, you end up with a kid that loves to read on their own. Same thing with the dog. Like if you cultivate that the right way, you end up with a dog that loves to work, not because you're making it work.
Yeah.
That it actually took I think it was after her first bird season, but I took one of my springers to a agility class because my son
Okay.
doesn't like to hunt, but he loved training the dog. I'm like, maybe this can be your thing with the dog in the summer. And
Yeah.
we only went one class because he was just like not having it. But the trainer, she brought out a Kata board. She even gave a pitch for Kata board, so I
Oh,
can
that's
like
awesome.
but she brings it out and like she has this big course set up there and all this and people there with their dogs and she's like, all we're gonna do today is place. Like your dog needs to learn and want to learn and enjoy learning. So we're just gonna do place today and we're gonna see how your dog's doing. This is all I want you to work on. And there were people in the class who were like resistant. Like they had their dogs there like, I don't, what about
I
the
wanted
ramps?
to go through polls and
What
yeah.
about what about all this? She's like, you're so far away from that, but we'll get there. If it can
Yeah.
learn and enjoy learning, it's gonna just domino. And everyone did it, and then everyone's dog did. People have some pretty smart dogs, and they'll figure it out pretty quick. And my dog already used
Okay.
Kata boards, so it was just like, yeah, this is what we do. Um, but like, it was interesting. That's kind of why I brought that up earlier. Is that people weren't connecting those dots of like this little thing here, and that's just one thing. There's a lot of little things you do. Like they were like, just can we go through the weave pools? Like that looks so cool on
Yeah.
TV. Um, it's like don't even look at the weave pools. Like
Yeah.
just place. Just
Yeah.
reward them when they touch that board.
You know
Um,
what's funny? Another like sports analogy here just crossed my mind. Like I've had discussions with parents who are like, well, the kids need to play game. Like they need to have like go to this tournament because they need to be rewarded for the practice and they need to have some fun, not just be practicing, but they need to have fun, right? And then also like winning. Well, they need to win to like keep them motivated, right?
mm,
And I think like not that my kids are incredible, but like I have four kids, but I have two boys that are of sports age. They're 12 and 14. And they are so gung ho about just going to practice. Like while we're recording this podcast right now, my wife took them to a soccer practice, and they were like, even though they play soccer literally 10 and a half, 11 months out of the year, like lots of soccer,
yeah,
they are so pumped to just go to that practice tonight. And like games are almost secondary to them because like they just love soccer. They love practicing. Like
Right.
they don't have to. Honestly, I don't think they would have to play in a soccer game all year, and they would still go to soccer practice and enjoy it. And I think like I now are my kids physically going to be able to like be a pro athlete? Probably not. There's a lot of pieces that have to
Yeah.
come fall into place. Like, and some of that is just like God-given physical talent, and
Right.
but you have to be in the upper echelon for that. But I think if you want to be successful in sports, you have to love practicing and training as much as you love like just like competing in actual sporting events, right? And I also think for dogs, like if you want to have a well-trained dog, like you've got to find a way to enjoy the process and enjoy the training and not just be like, well, I just gotta like if you see training as a chore and something you don't want to do and I just want to hunt the dog. I don't want to do that other stuff. Like
Yep.
that's just not a recipe for success at all.
Right.
And that's kind of been like my crusade, I guess, for the last like 5 years or 6 years is like just trying to get people to like have fun with their dog in the backyard. And like part of that is you've got to have a dog that wants to work with you in order to have fun. Like if I take a dog in the backyard and it doesn't want to do anything with me, like yeah, that sucks. And where do we go from here, right? Like probably ain't gonna happen. And the dog's never gonna reach its full potential. But if I have a dog that's like, yeah, come on, Jordan, like let's go do that again, right? And like I pull my training bag out or I grab a bumper and they're like quivering because they want to just go in the yard. Like, okay,
Yep.
that's fun. That's a lot more fun for me because that's a
Yeah.
dog that just wants to train. So
Yeah.
the more people can cultivate that drive in the dog, the more fun it's going to be for that person. And then, like, man, like just enjoy that process. Like hunting, I had somebody pick up a puppy from me just yesterday, actually, and they got a puppy from me 2.5 years ago that they absolutely loved, right? And he was like almost apologetic. He's like, well, I only hunted her like 5 or 6 times last year, but we just love her. We just love her. I'm like, well, that's kind of the average person right now. I
For
mean,
sure.
like, right? Like breeders will be like, I only sell to hunting homes because that dog needs to hunt. Like, okay, but like going on 5 hunts a year probably doesn't change the dog's life that much, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, this is
Yeah.
not like my childhood was hunting 100 days a year, or it was a bunch of hunting, right? That just and there are still people that do that, no doubt, but that's more of an
Sure.
anomaly at this point. Like most people are really, really busy, and if they get out hunting 5 to 10 times a year, like they're doing well, and there's no shame in that, I don't think. But considering that, like you're gonna hunt 5 to 10 days a year, you find a way to enjoy the training in your yard. Otherwise, nothing's gonna happen, right? And that's like I enjoy I enjoy training probably just as much as I enjoy like like training in my yard as much as I enjoy training in the field. And yeah, like hunting is fun. Hunting is fun because you get to go see like the end result of the training that
Yeah.
you've been doing in your yard and like you get outside. Like for sure hunting is fun. For sure. Um but I find a lot of enjoyment in just doing stuff with dogs at home and like, oh, I saw that puppy like connect that dot. That
Mm.
was really, really cool. And just oh yeah, like it's now we're ready to go. Like that dog is really picking up on things really fast right now. Like that's a cool thing. And I think the more people can experience that, like I I guarantee you there are very few people who wouldn't take one of my dogs into the yard and do some drills with it and get like a really cool feeling from it, right? Like it is pretty fun to take your dog out and like have it do things and have it working with you. And like that's fun. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the more people can experience that, like the better off dogs are going to be, I think. Like just their
Hmm.
quality of life is going to be better, but they're also going to be better hunting dogs. And like it's good for people too. Like it's good to get out and do stuff and just be active.
Yeah.
And this like style of training we've been discussing and that you've shown throughout the years is it like lets the breed of dog be that breed of dog. Like the two leashes on the dog's neck thing earlier, like that dog's just going to look like a beat down tail between his, I mean, has
Yes.
a chance to become have a tail between his legs and like that's not acting like a cocker or a springer just for an example. Like we know what cockers might be the best example. We know what their behavior is like and how they like to act, and we all probably smile at it when we see it. And like, don't you want your dog doing that at home and training in the field then like just submissive saying next to you because it's that's so much negative reinforcement. It's like when's the next boot gonna fall if I step out of line? Like I don't know, I'm a fan
Yeah.
of like if I have a Springer next to me, I want her to act like a Springer. Like for better or
Yeah.
worse. Like I want her to act like a Springer and then we're gonna train and work and do all the things to make her a good dog in the home and a good
And
dog
these
at the
things
brewery.
are,
But
I mean, dogs are replacing kids in this world right
they
now.
are.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like these are a lot of these dogs sleep on people's beds. They're pets. Like they all live in the house,
Yep.
right? I mean, like they're part of the family. Like who wants to go like take their family member and do that to them? Like
Yeah,
that's awful,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
our relationship with dogs has definitely evolved very, very quickly. And
Yeah.
I think for the most part, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And the more that people can find to do with their dog, like the better you're going to feel, the less guilt you're going to feel when you look at your dog. Like I know there's people that feel guilty because they're not doing anything with their dog. Some
Yeah.
of it's because they don't know
Yeah.
what to do. Some of it's because the dog doesn't want to do anything. Like it can be a
Right.
combination. But like they look at it, they're like, "Oh, I had all these big plans for you, but here I am, like eating Cheetos and watching reruns, and you're laying there getting fat, right? The dog
Right.
is like that's not a good feeling for anybody.
No,
Um,
not at all.
so, and I always think like no, this is an interesting one to think about. So like when we were kids, I'm 42 years, yeah, 42 years old, which isn't that old, right? Like 3 decades ago, Saturday mornings you watch cartoons,
Yep.
which I don't think that's really a thing anymore, but that was the
Yeah.
deal
I
back
don't think
then.
so. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And then well, I didn't get to every Saturday, but like every once in a while I'd get
Oh
to.
yeah.
And
That's a
there,
good Saturday morning. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Almost every cartoon had a dog in it, right?
It's
And
true.
the dog was almost always chained to the doghouse in the front yard,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it was, and nobody batted an eye. Like that was 100% normal. It wasn't animal abuse. It wasn't like it was just a dog, and like that's where dogs belonged, like chained
Yep.
up out front. Nobody batted an eye. If you did that to your dog right now, if you put a doghouse out front, put a stake in the ground and chain the dog to it, you would get turned in like really, really quickly,
Yep.
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
30 years ago, it was on the cartoons that kids were watching, and it wasn't a big deal. So, like, things have evolved very, very quickly with the
Yes.
relationship
It
with
has.
dogs.
It
And
definitely has.
I think this type of training, like, kind of accounts for or accommodates that relationship change. Like, you
That's a good
treat
point.
them, you treat them more like a kid, not so much in like you're anthropomorphizing them,
Yeah.
but more like treating them like a kid and that like you're using the same psychology to motivate them and to teach them things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And that resonates more with yeah, us, right? And how we just to your point, well, how we like our dogs. So yeah, I think there's still that old school thought process out there in folks who aren't like super engaged in the dog
Yeah, no
training
doubt.
world, but yeah, it makes sense that it evolved to there, and this is where we're at. And yeah, like you said, it makes it more enjoyable for the dog and for you, probably
I
Yeah.
overall.
think so. I
Yeah.
think so.
Well, we've kept you a long time, past longer than we thought we were, but it's sped by. Out to the time, like, is it really that time? Um,
Yeah.
Jared, did you have any other questions for Jordan before we kind of call this one good?
No, I think it was a great conversation. It answered a lot of my questions and stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed it as well. Like I was looking forward to being on like a flushing dog podcast with me that was like totally flushing dogs, and this has been a
Yep.
lot of fun. Hopefully people found it a little bit helpful.
Oh, I'm sure they did. There's going to be a lot of our listeners, I think, that reach out and we'll have some thoughts or some eye-opening moments where they heard some things. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, Jordan. Really appreciate it. If maybe in the future I have to have you on again and touch base on some things, and we'll see how much Jared and I didn't screw up or or did screw up our dogs
Okay.
at that point, and then go from there. But thanks again for coming on and chatting with us. It was a great time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good luck with your dogs.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Go Flush Yourself podcast. You can continue the conversation on our Discord server. The link is in the podcast description. You can also follow along with Matt and Jared on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to support the podcast, you can subscribe to the Go Flush Yourself on Patreon for the easy monthly cost of only $2. You can also check out our shop and pick up a Go Flush Yourself sticker, shirt, or other merchandise. All links are in the podcast description.